Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Greg Gumbel here with my partner Clark Kellogg, bringing you the 2K Sports Season Preview Show. Here are the top 5 teams in the nation as we head into the season. The North Carolina Tar Heels come in as the number 1 ranked team, followed by Kansas, Stanford, Oregon, and Pittsburgh. Clark, what's your take of the teams that make up the top 5?
I like the potential of each of these teams. I think all of them have a chance to win the championship this year. They're poised, loaded with talent, hungry, and very eager to prove themselves this coming year. I think each of these teams would be a dream to coach.
The North Carolina Tar Heels are projected as the favorites here in the early going. They've got a whole crew of high school Mr. Basketballs on this team.
A team is usually happy to land one Mr. Basketball, but with the number they have, this could be a golden era of basketball success at this university. There's nothing but good times ahead.
Kansas is in the number 2 spot. They were the NCAA tournament runner-up a year ago, and I'm sure the memory of that loss stayed with them over the summer.
We've seen very few championship game losers come back the next year and make it back to the title game, let alone win it. So they've got a little bit of history to contend with.
Stanford comes in as number 3. They have no fewer than 3 high school All-Americans on their roster.
If this coaching staff is able to work with those All-Americans and develop them at the collegiate level, there will be no stopping this squad.
Oregon starts the year as the 4th-ranked team. Certainly, they'll get a big boost from the return of their leading scorer from a year ago.
That's a big advantage for them. They don't have to spend the first few weeks of the season searching for that go-to guy. They know who he is, and they'll use him.
Pittsburgh is the number 5 team. They only have 2 of 5 starters returning from last year, so they'll need to establish some chemistry quickly.
I don't think it'll be a problem for them. The 2 players they do have coming back were glue guys on that squad last year, and they'll hold everything together this season as well.
Here's the next group of teams in our preseason top 25. What's your impression of that set of teams?
With such a long season ahead of us, it's almost impossible to put a finger on just who the contenders and pretenders are from this set of teams. But that doesn't mean we won't try.
The Texas Longhorns, the number 6 team, have stirred up a lot of talk in the offseason. They're going to have to find someone to fill the void left by their departed leading scorer, Clark.
The important thing for them is not to thrust someone into that role just for the sake of it. It will be a much smoother transition if the players are allowed to ease into their new spots.
The Marquette Golden Eagles, the number 12 team, have also generated a lot of interest. They are a very strong team, but they have plenty of competition from within their own league.
They're ranked highly now, but they're going to have to play a lot of tough games in that conference, and if they're not consistently playing at a high level, we could see them slip a bit.
Okay, Clark, let's take a look at the teams that close out the preseason top 25 poll. How about this list?
It doesn't get much weaker as you go down the list. Even near the end of the top 25, we see teams that could make a serious go at the national championship if things fell into place. I wouldn't count anyone out.
The Minnesota Golden Gophers, the number 20 team, probably deserve a closer look. Their dreams of tournament glory last year were quickly dashed in a first-round loss.
This year they have the potential to do much better than last. Last season they spent a lot of their energy getting to March Madness and were worn out once they got there. I'll bet they handled the journey to the tournament much better this time.
The Georgetown Hoyas, the number 16 team, are also worth keeping an eye on. They had a terrific record last season, finishing with 22 wins.
That 20-win plateau is one of those benchmarks in college hoops that immediately classifies you as an elite team. So they're going to have a tough act to follow. But if they simply play to their potential, they can reach that mark again.
As usual, we have a lot of new coaching hires to tell you about as we start the season. Here are the coaches who made a change this offseason. Some very interesting moves on the list, to say the least. The Tulsa coach is one of the hires that drew a lot of media attention. The Tulsa Golden Hurricanes have a lot of fans that are delighted to have a coach of his ability, Clark.
He's yet to find his way to that final weekend, but he still has an impressive resume. His new school is certainly hoping he can add a Final Four run to his list of accomplishments.
The Richmond coach also made a move to a new school, and that's generated some excitement on that campus. The Richmond Spiders are a team looking to rebuild under their new leader.
He proved himself at various levels of the sport, Greg, before getting this shot. I'm not sure that he's going to be an overnight success, but if this school shows some patience, I have no doubt he'll be successful.
We've come to the part of the show when we look at the top players in the nation and unveil the list of our preseason All-Americans. There before you are the 5 first-team All-Americans as we begin the season, and what a list it is. The Pittsburgh Panthers are pinning their hopes squarely on this young man's shoulders, Clark.
Hanavan is the first player on the list for good reason. Feels like this guy's been playing college basketball forever. This will be his 4th year as a starter. but I still don't take him for granted, and I think this will be his best season of all of them.
As for our next first-teamer, Alabama is more than willing to go into battle with him, Clark.
Laws is simply a spectacular player. He's a former high school Mr. Basketball He was Alabama's Mr. Basketball in high school. A player who is used to being such a dominant force usually carries that confidence with him to the next level. And that's exactly what we've seen with him in going from high school to college.
Next up is a player that's drawing comparisons to some of the all-time college greats. The Oregon Ducks are fortunate to have him in their corner.
James is one of my favorite players in the country. He was a multiple threat on the offensive end of the court last season, and there will be more of the same this time around. He led his team in scoring, and it's a lock that he'll do it again.
Let's move on to a player who's worked very hard to earn his spot on the list. The Kansas Jayhawks can depend on a solid effort from him each and every night.
Horton is going to play a huge role in his team's success. He can make things happen on the basketball court thanks to his unique ability to read and understand defenses, while most players are just trying to come up with their next move. He's 3 steps ahead of the game, and that's what separates the good players from the great.
And finally, we have another superb player to round out the first team. The Stanford Cardinal will probably get used to seeing him make the impossible look ordinary.
Luz is going to have his own personal highlight reel by the end of this season. He certainly wasn't afraid to mix it up inside last season. He came away with an average of 7 rebounds a game. That's just another aspect of his game that I expect to get better this season, and that's frightening to even think about.
Now let's move on to the second team All-Americans. Not such a bad list, huh? These elite players all have the potential to have historic seasons if the right pieces fall into place. The North Carolina Tar Heels have built their team around this young man's talent, and I'd say that's a pretty good idea.
Ryan was close to a spot on the first team, but there was too much competition this season. If I had to pick some front runners for the Player of the Year award, he would be right there on the list. I've seen him take over games even when he isn't scoring 30. There are some great scorers among these All-Americans, and he's one of them, but he does much more than score.
The next player on the team is a sensational player in his own right. Pittsburgh is in for a great year if he lives up to his potential.
McCreath is in the spotlight for all the right reasons. We always talk about the guys with great hands. Well, he's got great feet. I love those happy feet. There are few players in the nation with better footwork than him, and that's what allows him to always be in the right position, whether it comes to rebounding or finding space for an open shot.
We can expect to see some amazing performances out of him all year long. The Alabama Crimson Tide are looking for a lot of production from him, and they probably won't be disappointed.
Schaefer
is at the crux of his team's postseason hopes.
He was his conference's Player of the Year last season, and there's no doubt he'll be back in the running for that award this year, too. In fact, he may have some say in the race for National Player of the Year.
Our next All-American may have designs on the first team by the end of the season. Clemson has one of the most reliable go-to guys in the country in him.
Planis is one of the great talents in the college game today. He earned a reputation last year as one of the best low-post defenders in the nation. One look at his block totals from last year tells you all you need to know. He averaged more than 2 a game.
He's simply a game changer. Teams have to change how they run their offense when he's on the floor.
And here we have the final player on our list of All-Americans. The Oregon Ducks know who their fan favorite is going to be this year.
Seaman is ready to have a breakout season. There's plenty to like about him as a player. He's got that deadly combination of smarts and physical skills that makes him so difficult to defend. A coach's mentality in the body of a world-class athlete. Any questions as to why he's on the list?
All right, Clark, thanks very much. Glad you could join us for the 2K Sports Season Preview. We hope you enjoy all the college hoops action ahead.